If you've been watching
This is called Let's Talk About Logan Paul's Shonen Jump Problem. Let's get it. And speed it up a little bit because a little bit. Let's go.
my content for a while now, then I don't think it goes without saying, but I love manga. Ever since I read my first volume of Doraemon at the ripe old age of 3 years old and having learnt the Japanese language from birth, I've very quickly...
He's lucky he got to learn Japanese by from birth because he's half Japanese. I'm still learning it now at the right old ass age of 35. And my first manga that I've ever watched in my whole, read in my whole existence, and even a copy that I owned was Dot Hack Legend of the Twilight Bracelet. That was my very first manga that I've ever owned and read. After that, I don't keep physical copies anymore. I just, I go online and I have sites where I could just read manga.
come to realize that manga is not only a fascinating and cool art medium that exists in Japan, but is also ultimately a part of my culture as a half Japanese kid who has now been living in Japan for about half their life now. And, also considering the fact that I literally made a career off of talking about all this. For the longest time, manga, anime, and all things otaku from Japan were always shunned and looked down upon by the general public until the recent mainstreamification.
Yeah, I remember 90s when anime was just getting in to the Western market. Not a lot of people really gave a shit about it. There were mostly 3 channels that had anime. Cartoon Network got Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon. Kids WB got the first license for Pokemon, and then you had Fox Kids had Digimon. But other than that, there wasn't really that many other places where you can just watch anime, or even more so, there's not many places where you can buy Japanese anime media. Like, you really have to go to a really niche store somewhere in God knows where in order for you to get that. So,
definitely not a real word. The so-called mainstream metamorphosis of the medium, which is now estimated to be valued at around $20 billion worldwide, making it the largest that it has ever been. We've been seeing not only everyday people and content creators from all spaces openly express their love for the medium and certain characters and stories that have come from the medium, but it's even gotten to the point now where even A-list celebrities are coming out of the woodworks to talk about how they've always been a Naruto fan or how their favorite...
Okay, yeah, the celebrities that always keep coming out, I'm not knocking them for this. Straight up, I'm not. But every time I see celebrities coming out and talking about their favorite anime and manga, they always talk about the most mainstream manga / anime that I've seen. I think Naruto, One Piece, Dragon Ball Z. I want to hear something different. Give me a Claymore. Give me an Elfen Lied. Give me a Mao Yusha. Give me one of those. Not knocking. I'm glad that they're watching it. Talking about it in mainstream media, what anime is and what their favorite anime / manga is, if they read manga, that is. But I would be even more enamored if they mention an anime that's more niche. That'd be really something. That'd be a sight to behold.
manga of all time is Full Metal Alchemist, the original version. And let me just say that there is absolutely nothing...
I like this is gonna be a hot take, but not really. I like the original Full Metal Alchemist anime that first came out. The one that came out in 2003 or 4, I believe. It's a lot darker, a lot more grittier. I know it doesn't follow the the manga that well, but it was still good. I know Brotherhood is still good too, and I watched Brotherhood from beginning to end. But Full Metal Alchemist, the original one, was so much more detailed, so much darker, so much more, rougher. You know what I mean?
Wrong with that, regardless of what all of the Puritans in the space will say. And
especially the scene what happened to was it Mina? I think the girl that her father, what Shao Tucker did to her daughter and her dog, is a lot darker in the original Full Metal Alchemist.
Unfortunately, there is a lot of them. Personally, as a longtime fan of the medium, ever since it was occupying a small niche corner of the internet, I actually really am happy and am proud that the manga and anime community has thrived all across the world now, to the point where you don't have to be bullied for enjoying manga and anime. If anything, kids today get bullied for not liking manga and anime. It's just kind of reassuring.
Back when I was in high school and junior high, most of us kept the fact that we liked anime and manga on the DL, or we just found our own little group. Because if we didn't, bullies would get on my ass a lot, And I sure as hell never wore any clothing that represented anime because they would have given me shit for it. This was in junior high would have been in the mid 2000s. High school would have been late 2000s.
As a longtime fan that the world has finally come to this realization that manga and anime and all things otaku from Japan are kind of dope and it's a cool hobby to get into. But at the same time, we do also have to recognize that the oil has been spread thin on the water's surface. By that, I mean it's a lot harder to come across people who are delving deep into the history or the cultural significance of what makes manga and anime so cool and interesting compared to any other form of entertainment. If anything, a lot of people argue, and this is kind of the part where I somewhat agree with the Puritans of the community, that the culture has become this sort of trend that people have hopped onto because it's hip and cool now to like this kind of weird stuff from Japan. Right. And this is where I have to introduce to you all the star of today's video.
That's everyone. That's everywhere, though. I remember there was a lot of niche shit that used to occur. I'm sure, like, for example, it doesn't have to be anime. It could be clothing, could be video games. It could be just any type of hobby. Like, eventually, it's not going to be that niche, and people are going to catch on to it, and it's going to become big on mainstream eventually. That's what I've noticed. Like, for example, like what's a good example? Not anime, because he's talking about it. Like, let's just say for when it comes to dressing, like goth style. Back then, people like kind of looked down upon it and called it fucking cringe and weird. But nowadays, goth style's actually like coming back, you know, especially if you're like especially if you're like a thick goth mom, they're really gonna like it and shit like that. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, right?
Everybody's favorite, definitely not controversial content creator, Logan Paul. I never thought I'd be talking about Mr. Paul in
the guy that got banned from Japan because he went to and filmed Body. Yeah, that guy.
Video of mine again, because for those of you who've been around on my career for a while, then you would know that I have actually talked about Mr. Paul here almost a decade ago when he, went to the Aokigahara forest to film a dead body and cause absolute havoc and misery to all of the innocent people of Tokyo who were just trying to get by their day, but instead were stopped by this absolutely obnoxious content creator doing abhorrent things. And I don't think I need to justify in words exactly why and how psychotic that is. But it has come to my attention that he is in the internet news space again because of a recent brand new investment that he has started, which involves buying graded copies of Shonen Jump magazines. Specifically, there are two issues that he purchased to kickstart off his collection. One being the 1997 issue 34 magazine, which famously has this very sick cover with Luffy on the front of it. But
wait, what year? Hold on.
34 magazine, which famously has this very sick cover with Luffy on the front of it, but also most important is purchase to kickstart off his collection. One being the 1997 issue.
Oh shit, the 97. Bro, I remember seeing the promo of One Piece that came out in 98. You know, so this is like even more so, like this is like an introduction, like, hey, this is going to be a big manga type of thing. Because I know it's like Shonen Jump basically like introduces various different types of new artists and new mangas and anime that are coming out. I could be wrong about that. Please let me know if you guys are more knowledgeable about Shonen Jump, but that's what I think it is. So this is like super early and it's a grade 9. This has got to be worth a lot of fucking money. And the fact that this dipshit fucking has it, Logan Paul, who probably doesn't even watch fucking anime, who probably doesn't even know the characters. I stopped watching One Piece around 300 something episodes, like 3 or maybe 400, episode 400 or some shit like that. But I know most of the fucking characters and I know most of the shit that's going on right now in One Piece. I guarantee you this guy probably doesn't know shit about One Piece.
34 magazine, which famously has this very sick cover with Luffy on the front of it, but also, most importantly, was the first introduction to the world on the One Piece franchise. The first chapter of One Piece is in this particular issue. And the second one being a little bit older, but just as important, if not more important, the 1984 issue 51, I believe, which again has this really sick cover of Goku and Bulma on the front of it, and similarly to the previous one, is the first introduction to the world of the legendary manga series, Dragon Ball. Not only are these two just really cool pieces of manga history to get your holds on, and yes, I will be the first one to admit that I am very jealous. I'm not going to pretend that I'm not as a avid fan of not only One Piece and Dragon Ball, but just of Shonen Jump and manga history in general, especially considering that I grew up with both of these series and I grew up reading a fuckload of Shonen Jump magazines since middle school. But as you can see from these two pictures that were posted in the announcement of this investment, that these are not just your everyday issues of Shonen Jump. No, they are in fact highly graded by the grading company Beckett, which for those of you who don't know, Beckett is responsible for grading all sorts of hobby-based collections, most notably things in the TCG community like Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, all that kind of stuff.
Definitely fucking Pokemon, dude. Definitely fucking Pokemon. They get a fucking people, like, I think they, because I'm not into Pokemon, I think they rely mostly on Beckett in order for them to get their actual like grading system. I think they're more strict when it comes to the grading system. So that's the only thing I know about Beckett, that they're really strict about their grading.
Do other stuff too, like VHSs and tickets of like concerts and stuff like that. And I guess
As in, they literally look through a microscope to see any flaws or abnormalities within the Pokemon cards, and if even one sliver of a issue is with that card, you're not getting that 10. Because most of these Pokemon, dude, they want that grade 10 because the grade 10 are worth more money. Hell, the amount of money that drops from a 10 to a 9 is just staggering. You know, like let's just, for example, the Charizard, the first edition Charizard, for example. Everybody knows about that shit. Like a grade 10 would be like like thousands of dollars, I would say, thousands. But if you get a grade 9 or a 9.5, then it's the significant value is going to drop probably in the hundreds, maybe in the low thousands, maybe.
As of recently, manga and anime. Now, the amount of money, which everybody is most curious about, that he paid for specifically the issue of Dragon Ball,
Probably a fuck ton because he's rich.
Is unfortunately undisclosed. We can all take a guess as to how much he paid, but we do know how much he paid for the One Piece issue.
Probably
and
a
that
fuck
is
ton.
the cool price of $550,000 US.
Cool $500,000.
Now, initially when this news was notified to me by you guys over on the Instagram, thank you for that, by the way, and the first time I saw all of this information, there were a number of questions that were revolving around in my mind. Importantly, and I guess the first question that I had in my mind is, since when is Logan Paul a fan of manga at all? And I felt justified in knowing that I wasn't the only one asking this question. Not only were there a ton of other people online asking this exact same question, but we also had some notable figures in the content creator scene like iShowSpeed, who is most notably a very
he likes
fan
manga.
of
He
One
likes
Piece,
One
who
Piece
ratioed
specifically.
The fuck out of Logan,
the Ronaldo
on,
loving
the
One Piece
Elon Musk
dude.
website by simply saying you don't know shit about One Piece. And that's not to mention the fact that there have been some clips circulating on the internet of Mr. Paul misnomering the protagonist of One Piece as Luffy D. Monkey.
Luffy D. Monkey, shut up, Luffy.
Monkey D. Luffy.
What?
Monkey D. Luffy.
It's Monkey D. Luffy.
Which, look, let's play devil's advocate and say that it was just a simple mistake. But even people who have never read or watched a single chapter or episode of One Piece can tell you that his name is Monkey D. Luffy. That's like the equivalent of saying that the protagonist of Dragon Ball's name is Goku-san. One of the main reasons why I wanted to talk about this in a longer form video like this is concerning the amount of dichotomy and conversation that has been revolving around this piece of news. Most primarily all of the different opinions
Something's
of people
going on with something's going on with the VHS tape in the background. Have y'all noticed that?
The attacking.
Something's happening. I think that's Pokemon the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back. Something's not right. Something's going on with it, bro. Something's not right. Don't tell me that the VHS tape is going off the fritz. Gotta fix that shit real quick, my dude.
Defending this particular purchase. Naturally, a lot of manga fans are clowning on Mr. Paul here
because could be his TV.
He genuinely does not come off as a fan of the medium whatsoever. But there have also been a lot of people defending Mr. Paul in saying that you don't necessarily need to be into art to start collecting art. Which to an extent I do agree with. But the problem then lies in a number of things, including the barrier of entry for collecting art, as well as the nature of the individual in question here. May I remind you once again that this is the same man who not only went to Aokigahara Forest to film a dead body for his massive YouTube audience, but this is also the same man that people point the finger at who has indirectly been responsible for the hyperinflation of the TCG collection community. Most notably things like Pokemon cards, which he, I believe, made one of the biggest purchases of and made one of the biggest
Pikachu
sellers
Illustrator.
of in Pokemon TCG history.
This is what I talked about, the grade 10 Pikachu Illustrator, bro. He bought it like from some like down low, well, I think it was probably like a Saudi dude or some private collector, if I can recall correctly. The amount of money he fucking paid for a Pokemon card, good lord!
One of the biggest
My
purchases
God, what
of
is
and
it?
made
16.5 million. Jesus Christ! And he hanged it on he dangles it off his fucking neck. I'm glad that he fucking like at least like put it away in a vault or something like that. Because I would not have this shit around, like especially nowadays where people would just yank your shit out or just cut you the fuck up and force you to give them their shit. Yeah, I probably wouldn't. Good on him for not keeping that shit around.
In one of the biggest sells of in Pokemon TCG history, resulting in not only the barrier of entry for everyday Pokemon fans to rise to improbable heights that cannot be afforded by the everyday person, but also has ultimately birthed this incredibly toxic scalping and reselling culture that has permeated the Pokemon TCG community ever since. To the point where now
scalp it's not only there, it's not only with Pokemon or like with anime, bro. It's also in the sneaker community because me personally, I collect Nike SBs. Well, anything like for example, Nike SBs, old Dunks, old Pro Bs, and anything with the fat tongue in it. I collected like from like late 90s all the way to like current. Like my collection is still growing right now. I have like 20 pairs. And I fucking detest scalpers. Like, especially when it comes to like the newer joints that coming out, especially the more exclusive ones. These fucking scalpers, especially on the sneaker app, they would go in, they use some bots. I'm glad that the sneaker app like have a new system where basically they can detect bots that are making these purchases, the ones that buy in fucking bulk. But there's still scalpers out there that would probably have some people in the like that what do you call it, that probably knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. They'll buy a fuck ton of that shoe and they would resell it for double the fucking price. I've noticed that a lot of them are getting the shit rock because they're not selling those shoes as much as they should have, and they're taking a loss. Thank Christ for that. I can't fucking stand scalpers, man.
Pokemon fans who are adults and Pokemon fans who are especially kids who want to just live a childhood collecting these monster cards like every other millennial did 20, 30 years ago, who now can't walk into a store and buy packs without these resellers and scalpers getting it before them, who then go on to sell it for 5, 10 times the price because they want to make a little bit of a profit off of it. As someone who has been collecting cards with my wife now because we literally grew up playing Pokemon and it is one of our favorite franchises that literally shaped our childhood, we've personally had to put a hold onto collecting Pokemon.
Dude, I started collecting Pokemon cards like with the binder and everything back when it first came out in the States in 1999, maybe even early 2000s, 99, early 2000s. When that came to the States, especially in my middle school, because at the time I was in 99, I was 8 years old. Holy shit, everybody was going fucking crazy. There were even a few kids bringing in fake Pokemon cards just to have fake Pokemon cards. We didn't know the difference, and some of us actually didn't know the difference. We kind of clowned on him, not me, clowned on that kid for bringing in fake cards. But Pokemon cards were just going crazy back then.
Cards because it's just become really annoying to deal with all of these resellers and scalpers who get there before us. We're just sick of this never-ending goose chase of having to buy these packs or these particular cards before the scalpers get to them at affordable prices, because that's not the reason why we collect Pokemon cards. We don't collect Pokemon cards because we're trying to hopefully one day make a profit off of it. We just want to collect Pokemon cards because we want to relive our childhoods. We want to just enjoy having this collection to look through because we enjoy the franchise. Also, and I hate to bring this up because this is such low-hanging fruit as well, this is the same man, by the way, who has been responsible for a number of rug pull crypto scams that he has still not paid back for the victims of, who ultimately lost sometimes life savings worth of money over. But let's play devil's advocate here. I
hate that shit too. But I hate that. I remember that crypto scam. I'm sure some of you remember that shit too. But I also gotta blame the people who were stupid enough to fall for that shit. How many fucking people have been doing these crypto scams lately? Anyway, like him, that Hawk Tua girl, and some other fucking dudes. Y'all had to fucking know that he was gonna fucking scam you. Come on, dude. Come on. There's no fucking way. I would never fall for any type of shit that any of these fucking influencers post up. Never.
For argument's sake, to pretend that Mr. Paul here has a squeaky clean history. He has never been involved in any of these controversies. He is as innocent as you could get any collector to be. In this hypothetical situation, I'm still worried about this particular purchase because of what it could possibly do to the culture of buying manga and the whole act of collecting magazines and manga as a hobby, and the different potential toxic cultures that could be birthed as a result of this change. Because yes, it is true that in order to collect art, you don't necessarily need to be into the art. I mean, everybody has to start from zero at one point when it comes to getting into any hobby, but if you do want to start collecting things like manga and not know anything about it, then there are so many other affordable price points that you can start off with. For example, buying individual volumes like this. And there's only benefits to this too, not just in the monetary sense. I mean, these are pretty damn affordable. If you come to Japan and go to any secondhand store, then you can get these for like less than 100 yen. Brand new, they're like 400 yen. They each have nice covers as well, so you can appreciate them as pieces of art. They are nice and small.
I wish I knew the converging currency, how much 100 yen is or 400 yen is. I'll post it up. I posted up when I put the video up on YouTube.
Too, so they don't take up as much space as giant Shonen Jump magazines on your shelf. And if you actually give a shit about, consuming the contents that is within the pages, then it's presented in a very nice size that is easy to pick up and put down. Oh, and most importantly, it doesn't cost $500,000 fucking dollars to purchase. In my personal opinion, I think real collectors who are actually passionate about starting a collection start from a much lower barrier of entry and then work their way up as they get more invested and start to know more about the actual things that they are collecting. collecting. Because for them, it's not about the money or the value that is sitting on their shelves, but rather the joy that they get from knowing that they have this collection of things that they are genuinely passionate about and actually makes them happy. That's why when people start collecting Pokemon...
Yeah, the pride of me having, the feeling I get when I see my fucking Nike SB, especially the ones that are more exclusive that most people cannot get their hands on, it kind of gives me, like, it brings my soul, it shines my soul, if that makes any sense. It makes me feel good. And I get what he's saying.
Cards, for instance, they don't immediately go out and buy a PSA 10 Pikachu poncho because the barrier of entry is so high. You start off with
7 million yen. That's got to be like in the hundreds of thousands.
Simple booster packs or simple common cards, and then you work your way up from
2016.
there if you actually enjoy it. And if some of those people's first purchases for the collection are the PSA 10 Pikachu ponchos, then 99 times out of 100, they don't actually care about the thing that they're collecting, only about the value and the personal gain that they can achieve from having that item. And look, don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with that, right? Like, do the hustle that you think works best for you. There are so many millionaires and billionaires who drop egregious amounts of money to buy traditional art just to hang up on their wall to boast to their other billionaire friends, but don't pretend and sit there and go like, oh yeah, I've always been a fan of manga. I grew up reading One Piece and Dragon Ball. Luffy D. Monkey is my favorite character. Like, Logan, just be honest with yourself and everyone on the internet, okay? You bought these issues because you know that it's most likely going to be the next big trend in investment collecting, and you only care about the attention that it brings you and the inflation of the market that will eventually lead to your personal monetary gain, like you basically have with every other hobby-based collections that you've been participating in. I think the funniest thing, though, out of this entire situation, according to a bunch of people on the internet, is that the issue of the One Piece Shonen Jump magazine that he bought for $500,000 might not even be the original issue from 1997, but instead a reprinting of the issue, which in the market value of 2025 was estimated to be around $700. And even if it is the original 1997 printing,
so potentially he could have got fleeced.
There were listings in 2025 that were going upwards of around $7,000. So suffice it to say that Logan paid more than 20 times the market value, not because he is actually interested and gives a shit about the medium and the art and the culture surrounding it, but because he wants to inflate the market for his personal gain and recognition. And don't worry.
Yeah, flexing on all us poor brokies, bro. Man, imagine if he really did pay that much. Well, he did pay that much, but imagine if that's actually a reprint and not the actual original one that came out. Imagine how much of a... Actually, I don't even think he'd give a shit because this guy has so much fucking money. How much money did this guy actually lose constantly, like, over his past ventures? I'm sure he's not even going to give a shit about losing a couple of $100,000, a couple of racks over it, bro. He doesn't give a fuck.
Logan, you got the recognition from the manga community, not as a genuine fan of the medium, but as the world's biggest LARPer pretending to be a fan because you want to participate in this new potential market.
I'm gonna be honest, guys. Right now, I'm just watching Mewtwo Returns currently right behind Joey. I am listening, but I'm just watching Pokemon right now.
That you will ultimately gain some kind of monetary compensation for. Look, I'm not going to sit here and shout into the void and say, hey, Logan, if you're a fan of One Piece, then name 5 characters that aren't Luffy D. Monkey, but I do want to question and criticize this purchase and this facade of being a manga fan and having always been a manga fan, and that's the reason why it justifies this purchase. Like, bro, just admit it. You're not a fan of manga, and that's fine. Just live with that, and it's cool. But also, at the same time, I'm kind of on all of the manga puritans' side because I am very afraid that the manga collecting community is going to suffer the same fate that the Pokemon TCG community suffered through, and all these other hobby-based collections suffered through indirectly because of you. And if you're watching this video and you want to start collecting manga, then I highly advise you to do so. And I highly advise you to start from affordable price points, like, for example, individual volumes or even just average, everyday, non-graded volumes of Shonen Jump, because I genuinely do not understand how these grading companies like Beckett can grade mass-produced magazines with like these PSA ratings or whatever rating system that Beckett uses. It just seems like an elaborate scam to me. And look, if the act of collecting manga volumes like this or Shonen Jump magazines turns you onto the culture and the history and the significance and all of the wonderful stories that are hidden within the pages of these books, then that's awesome. But again, my personal advice is to start from the lower barrier of entry and work your way up when you see fit. It's all about moderation. Like, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you all in saying that I don't have any exclusive or expensive, valuable pieces in my manga collection. Of course I do, but that's because I actually give a fuck about the medium, and I'm genuinely proud to have it, not because of the value that it holds, but because of the significance that it has towards this culture that I'm genuinely passionate about. But yeah, that's about it for this video. Let me know your thoughts and opinions about anything I said.
Yeah, good fucking video by Joey. He's absolutely right. I don't think he gives a shit either, bro. But the fact that he's just probably just doing it to flex on everybody or to inflate the market. Because the fact is that he doesn't really care. I don't think he cares. I'll be honest with you. I don't think he cares. He's just saying like, yo, look how much I spent on this fucking item. I guarantee money. Most of you guys can't fucking pay for this shit ever in your lives. That's probably like what he's probably thinking, or maybe not. Who knows?